Absolutely.
Well, I'm very excited to talk about all the different things that Restore Tranquility does. I know we talked about psychotherapy and yoga therapy, and the
Yeah.
cannabis psychedelic therapy also. It all seems really amazing. I would love for you to introduce yourself and Restore Tranquility to our listeners. This is for some the first time that they're hearing of you, but I am just in awe of all the
Yeah.
services that you offer and the ways that you help people. And I really would love that to come from you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And thanks for having me here. My name is Shervon Laurice. I am a licensed psychotherapist here in Maryland, as well as a certified yoga teacher, yoga therapist, as well as a certified cannabis assisted psychedelic therapist. And I have been working at my practice for this makes 20 years this year. And I feel like I'm like, whoo, I'm getting up there. um, but I love it. I still love it. It's funny. The pandemic was hard on therapists, hard on all of us because we were working so hard. But I've come out of it in a place of excitement about what I continue to get to offer to the community, to the world. Whereas I know a bunch of folks that are kind of retracting and deciding whether or not they even still want to do this kind of work. So I feel really blessed to really still be in this space, you know. Restore Tranquility is a space to offer clients a way to heal. It's a way for them to reconnect with themselves, to get unstuck, and to become the creators of their own life. And so it doesn't really matter which of the services they choose, they can access that within whichever part they choose. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful, it's always a wonderful day and always a wonderful week.
I really love that you mentioned, well, not that I love it, but that you mentioned 2020 and how much of a mental and emotional shift that was for a lot of people around whether or not they were doing what they were called to do, whether they were doing things that actually
Yep.
brought passion. And not to go on too much of a tangent, but this has been a conversation that I've been hearing a lot lately. And one of
Mm-hmm.
the most celebrity references to this exact thing was Trevor Noah when he decided that he was leaving
Ah.
the Daily Show. And it was funny because I remember the first time I heard he was leaving the Daily Show after everything that he went through to replace Jon Stewart and the entire show, how it morphed around him and his personality, and people began to love him in that role when they thought never could anyone
Mm-hmm.
do it. And for him to go, oh, I think I'm good on this. I think I'm done. And my first thought when I heard that was the pandemic changed even him so much that he had to look at his role at the Daily Show and say, I don't know if this is what I want to be doing. And right now, even it's not what
Right.
I want to be doing. I want to go do something else. And so, well,
Yep.
I love that you brought that up, but also that you're still here to offer your services because, yeah, I think on some level it does mean that you are not only where you want to be, but where you are helping people and really making an impact in a way that is needed so much more now after all of that.
Amen. So much more so. Thank you.
Yeah. So I would love, I've been practicing yoga since 2008. And so when I read through your website and I read through your social media, I was very knowledgeable about what it is that you were talking about in terms of your services and how it is that you help people. For people who don't necessarily know what these services are, I was wondering if, in the way that you would explain it to someone who has zero knowledge of what it is, what are these services, the psychotherapy and the different
Mm.
types of services that Restore Tranquility offers, just so that if people don't know about it and they're listening to the show, they can still follow along with us as we chat.
Wonderful. So psychotherapy is what we always lovingly call talk therapy,
Okay.
where you meet with a therapist one-on-one usually or in a couples setting to talk about life's issues, things that are coming up for you, whether that's mental or emotional health, or something's going on in a relationship in your life, or work-life balance, whatever it might be, even spiritual growth, because my degree is actually in pastoral counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I also get to talk about the spiritual in my work, which a lot of therapists don't do, and some have even shunned. And so we talk even about spiritual and religious things. And then yoga therapy has two, I would consider two sides to it. So for some, yoga therapy is really about the physical healing. Like, say you just had knee or hip surgery or back surgery, and you've gotten the okay from your doctor, and you've already done PT, but you're not quite back to 100%, right? So you might come to a yoga therapist who might work with you to strengthen muscle tone, and to build flexibility, and to get you back to closer to that 100%. But for me, a lot of my yoga therapy work is around mental health. It's working with people who have complex PTSD and anxiety and depression, and working with them to put together a program that's not just asana on the mat based, but using breath work, yoga nidra, meditation, yoga philosophy, whatever is good for them that I can figure out might, really work for them. I put together a program for them, and they can work that program at home. So it's really about teaching a client how to use yoga techniques to heal themselves, you know?
Yeah.
And then cannabis assisted psychedelic therapy is taking the use of cannabis, which we all know about, right, as this recreational thing, and using it like a classic psychedelic.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about meeting with the client one on one, or if they're going to do a group setting, and preparing them for what to expect, helping them to shift their mindset about cannabis, setting intention,
Mm-hmm.
and then going into a session, whether it's a 2 day intensive, they are 3 or 5 hours, or a conscious cannabis circle, or even a psycholytic therapy session, and allowing them to journey with the medicine like any other psychedelic.
Mm-hmm.
Usually there's music, there's me guiding and talking them through it. And since I'm also a licensed therapist, we can work with whatever the trauma is that comes up for a lot of people. And that's what drew me to this particular work, is when you can work in the unconscious level of the mind, you allow healing to happen, because we can release so many things in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the journey's over, and after I bring people back, we have integration, and usually there's 1, 2, or 3 integration sessions after. And so the prep and intention setting, as well as the integration sessions after, are kind of the parentheses around the experience, and that's what separates it from recreational use.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, there's so much in there. I love that idea of the parentheses, and I talk a lot about this in my own work too. That the journey isn't just the experience, but it's also prepping for the journey, and sometimes the afterwards, which can be cleanup. It can be reflection. It could be
Yes,
start with the planning and what it is that you want to do. Then you have the experience, but then there's also the experience that you have after, that is a part of that entire journey. And thank you so much
absolutely.
for, yeah, thank you so much for talking about the different limbs of yoga. I've been having this conversation a little bit more lately, that people believe that yoga is asana, that asana is yoga, but the
Yes,
term yoga actually includes a lot of, not only the 8 limbs, but everything that stems from those limbs, and that psychology too. So, we won't get too heavy or deep into it, so that the people that are listening, that are hearing this for the first time, can't follow along. I think, one of the things that I was really excited to talk to you about was this, present centered awareness that you talk about. I know that in terms of confidence building and how it is that we relate to ourselves as people in this current space, we have our past that definitely influences the way that we think about ourselves and others, how it is that we go about our days in terms of what we find to be priorities, what it is that we put on the back burner. And then also that we spend a lot of time thinking about the future, right? What is it that
Yeah.
you're striving towards? What are the dreams that you want? What are the goals that you're trying to hit? What are those things that you deeply, deeply desire, but don't believe that you can achieve, or that somehow you won't be able to get to them based on the community you're in, the society we live in, the world at large, all these things, right? It gets very easy to get stuck in our past narratives and get caught up in the future that we're attempting to build, with that sense of uncertainty that can sometimes keep us stuck. But you bring it back to this present centered awareness, and I would love for you to explain what is present centered awareness.
Yeah, happily. Present centered awareness or present centered focus is another way I describe it. It's about allowing yourself to be fully in the now, to be
Mhm,
fully present for this moment that you're in.
mhm.
And so many of us spend so much time in our heads,
Yeah.
whether we're in the past or leaning into the future,
Yeah.
and we miss what's going on in our present moment, you know? And so present centered awareness is simply catching yourself with their, I'm old enough to remember record players. So I always liken it to the record that is playing in the back of our minds,
Mhm.
you know, and it's giving us these messages about ourselves, about our lives, and about our world around us, our environment around us. And if we don't pause long enough to catch ourselves, those messages just keep getting reinforced.
Mhm.
And so for me in my work with so many people, it's about asking sometimes like just get the screech of the needle off the record and asking the question, what are you believing about yourself right now?
Mhm. Mhm.
Right? And that is usually something that makes people go, huh, because it's usually based on some past narrative
Yep.
about something they've told themselves or somebody else told them based on some past experience that they've had that they've been carrying with them into their present focus,
Mhm.
present future, you know? And when we hold on to those past things, we then narrow our future focus and limit it because now we're like, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, or I shouldn't do that
Yeah.
because all of these things from back here, right?
Yeah.
Present centered awareness is accessed by just coming to the awareness that you're doing that in your mind,
Yeah.
taking a breath and being still. And sometimes it's asking that question in your mind, what am I believing about myself right now?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, I'll use myself as an example. When I bought this house, it was in 2020 and it's a new development. And I knew I wanted to buy a house because in 2020, I spent no money, couldn't go anywhere, and had saved for a down payment faster than I ever thought I'd be able to because we couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
But every house I found in my price range was a fixer upper. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm not spending that kind of money to then have to fix it up. I
Right.
don't have time for that.
Right.
So I come to this new development, I do the tour, I pick a floor plan, and the woman says to me, you have the option to get one of the houses that faces one of the ponds or lakes, and it's going to be, I think she said it was $10,000 more. And I was like, oh no, I don't need that. And so we went on, we did the paperwork, and then I went home. About 3 days later, something in the back of my mind started noodling.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I caught myself. I was like, wait, why did I say I didn't need that? And
Uh-huh.
realized I had this always had this habit of just trying to keep myself, contained,
Uh-huh.
small,
Yeah.
and not allowing myself to be bigger or dream bigger. I
Mhm.
called her back that Monday,
I'll
Monday
take
or
the
Tuesday,
view.
and said I changed my mind.
I'll take
I'll take the view, and I have loved this view ever since.
I
But
love
it was
that.
an old belief. It was an old belief.
Yeah, that
Hmm.
to save the money, you'll forego the view.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
The upgrade.
exactly.
It's very
Hmm.
interesting. And it's funny because in my head, I thought, this present-centered awareness, I love the label. And I'm not very, very much one to label things, but I think that, um, when it comes to something like our past narratives or our patterns of thinking or even our patterns of behavior and the way that
Hmm.
it, stifles our confidence or stifles our ability to say, I want the upgrade. I'll take the upgrade. Those little things in us, because there isn't something to name them, to label them, to acknowledge them as, we just, automatically think that's just how it is. That's like, why does
Yes.
it need to be any different? Like, what is so bad or wrong about, living this narrative that's, 10, 20, 30 years of my past self? What's so wrong with looking towards the future all the time? But if we're not feeling good, if we're not feeling happy, if we're not feeling fulfilled, then that's what's wrong with it. But sometimes
That's what's wrong with
that's what's wrong with
it.
it. But we also get caught up because we don't, I don't know if you've ever had this with your clients, but I have it quite a bit where people will come and they'll say, I just feel like, like it's a lot of noises and hand gestures, but they don't have the words to put on it. And then finally, I'm able to say,
Yes.
well, it sounds like you're living a lot, in this mind frame of who you were when you were 20 years old and just left home. And you haven't yet adjusted to the fact that you've been an adult on your own for the last 15 years, and you're unsettled because you never claimed that identity. And they're like, oh, so what do I do? And it's like, well, now you got to look at who you are now and what you want to do now. But it's interesting
Yes.
because there's never been a label for it for me before. It's just like, it's now, you
Yeah.
gotta focus on now, and that's not as beautifully eloquent as this present centered awareness. It's what it is. I've always just been like, we're going to look at now, and what happened before gets to stay there, and what you're hoping will happen in the future gets to stay there. But for now, we have this opportunity to look at what's really here. And what's really here right now for you is that you're unsettled and you're unfulfilled and you're questioning yourself in the past and in the future, instead of just
Hmm.
being okay with what's happening here, or even acknowledging or honoring that you're feeling this way, because you can't put a name to it. You're just agitated. You're feeling agitated, right?
Indeed, indeed. And it's funny because I love working with clients like in their mid 30s to their mid 60s because that's the
That,
that's the sweet spot where everybody starts waking up and asking questions,
yeah.
about their lives, whether it's relationships, where they live, their careers. It always starts with a feeling. Something is unsettled.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And
Hmm.
I will say this for myself, but I know it's true for my clients too, is that we all desire that sense of stability and settlement, and I don't think it's ever like I want to find the one thing I'm supposed to be doing and the one person I want to be settled, and it's just more like we want to feel at ease. We want to know that
Yes,
where we are in our present day, what we're doing right now is leading us to the goals we want to have, or even just the peace we want to achieve. I feel like
absolutely.
our world has done a really good job of stirring up so much, like the lack of peace, the absence of peace, for the arguing, the fighting, the combativeness, the I'm right, you're wrong, this is the way you do it, this is the way
Hmm.
you shouldn't do it. It's like from every different direction, it's always this tension and this resistance, rather than
Yeah.
what I believe we could more easily be doing, which is, finding I believe it comes from finding perspective, and not just from our own perspectives, but being able to look at someone else's perspective and say, even if I don't agree with you, I can see how you think that, and allowing
Yes.
it to, instead of being this fight, it's like, oh, we just have different brains and think different things.
Yes.
So when you are working with your clients, how do you decide which of the services that you offer is the best one for them? I was thinking about this as I was looking through your website, because I'm like, well, all of them sound great, but as you know, you do help with a lot of different things. So is there anything in particular that stands out to you when you're looking at new patients, to say, I think that this would be the best thing for you?
Some of it starts with why they contacted me in the first place.
Uh-huh.
Usually, when a person clicks on the contact page and they send me that email, they'll say, I'm interested in such and such and such.
Mm-hmm.
But once we have the consultation, I can usually say to them, it sounds like, based on what we've been talking about for the last, 30 minutes or whatever, um, you would be best suited for this. When people are super stuck, right, and they really want to get unstuck, I will oftentimes talk about cannabis assisted work,
Mm-hmm.
because it really, since it works so far below the unconscious and
Mm-hmm.
helps people bring what that is that's making them feel stuck to the surface, and it does it in those 2 sessions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Quick, not 6 months of therapy.
Yeah.
Brings it right up for them. Using an example, I worked with a client back in, I think it was 2021, and she wanted to start a new business, but had had an experience more than a decade ago of starting a business and it failed.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was kind of shy about stepping into this new idea.
Mm-hmm.
And she did that cannabis assisted experience and came out of it with the knowing, I can do hard things,
Mm-hmm.
that I should at least go forward and build this business.
Yeah.
And she's doing it. She's doing
Yeah.
it. So it's that kind of thing that really gets my juices going. So, yeah, so it's in talking with people, and if they're feeling that sense of unstuckness, I
Mm-hmm.
can offer that for them.
I love that. I know that I have a lot of entrepreneurs that follow me and listen to the show, and business owners in general. And it's something that I've noticed over the last 3 or 4 years. I think I've been in the industry. I'm going into my 6th year now, but over the last 3 or 4
Nice.
years, yeah, is that people are getting so caught up in the metrics of things, like how many followers do you have, how many people view your videos, how much money do you make every month, how many people sign on with you every month, and all these things, these metrical things. And
Mm-hmm.
what's now being bypassed are what you were just explaining, which is, the self-doubt and the fear, and, getting stuck mentally and emotionally. And how do I lead this? How do I be a business owner? How do I
Mm-hmm.
make sure that, once people do start coming to me, that I'm in a happy, healthy headspace to help these people? No, it doesn't matter what your business,
Yeah.
if you're leading them or helping them, you have to be in that good space. And so much
Yeah.
of that is being bypassed for this now metric focused business leadership. And I just really appreciate hearing, these firsthand stories from you, or this firsthand story from you, about someone who came and really had a mental emotional block. There was
Mm-hmm.
no sales coach or marketing coach or website developer that could really come in and say, this is how you fix this, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not a business metric. It's such a mental emotional metric that we as leaders and as business owners really have to take accountability for, really have to say,
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I can do this. I used to think that I could do this, or when I started, I was like, yeah. And now that I'm in it, I'm like, can I do this kind of thing, right? And that
Right.
we are able to stand up and say, I need help with my energy. I need help with my mental patterns. I need help that cannot be given through more followers or more money or anything like that. It's such a different,
Mm-hmm.
a separated experience that we are just not talking about enough.
Yes, I would agree.
So we've been talking a little bit about these past experiences and the past narratives. And, one of the things that you and I had talked about is how to use that rather than ignoring them, rather than saying, like, okay, I used
Mm-hmm.
to think that, but I am not going to think that anymore because I'm going to be a bad bee over here running my business, kind of thing, right? How, what is, I don't, and like not necessarily advice, but the conversation that we had about past narratives and how to use them in our healing versus ignoring them in our healing. I would love to chat
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more about like what that process looks like, because I do think that for some people it's easier to like stuff it down, lock it up, and just like, fake it till you make it mentality. But there's so much power in utilizing our past narratives and infusing them into our healing. And I know that this is something that you do, so I'd love to just pick your brain about what that looks like and how it's a much better decision than the stuffing and the locking up.
Yeah, because eventually you put it in a box, it's going to pop back up eventually, kind of like the old Jack in the Box.
Yep.
So it's so much better to acknowledge, you know, um, give attention to, in the sense of learning about um, these old parts of ourselves, these old experiences, these old narratives that we have carried around for a while. And forgiveness is in there,
Oh
I
yeah.
have to say,
Mhm.
because our old narratives often have other people attached to
Mm,
them. Somebody did something, said something, or didn't do something that they should have, or said something that they should have.
yeah.
And we hold that, you know? And a lot of the work, I believe, is around not just, seeing it, acknowledging that it happened, coming to an understanding about whatever it was that happened.
Mhm.
And then acceptance is about knowing that the other person or persons, or even ourselves,
Mhm.
didn't know what they probably know now,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
So there was this saying, and I think it's attributed to Les Brown. Yeah, I think so. If when we know better, we do better,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And oftentimes the slights, the harm, the traumas that have been caused by other people is because they, for one, didn't know who they were. Two, they didn't know who you were,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And in that ignorance, they behaved in these ways.
Definitely.
We
Yeah. Practice.
too have probably harmed someone in some way, shape, form, or fashion, or even just harmed ourselves by not taking the care of ourselves that we really should.
Yeah.
And instead of beating ourselves up, right? Same thing. When you know better, you do better.
Yeah.
So that old you didn't know what you know now. And
Yeah.
so you allow yourself some acceptance, some compassion around that, and forgiveness.
Mhm.
And that's how you are able to step into the present moment. It's the letting go, it's the coming to acceptance, it's the coming to forgiveness. And I am keenly aware that there are some traumas that we have all experienced or know of someone else experiencing that it's really hard to talk about forgiveness with.
Mhm. Mhm.
But forgiveness is not necessarily about the other person.
Mhm.
Forgiveness is more about you, I, the person, because the holding of that trauma as the memory settles into our bodies, it settles into our consciousness, settles into the tissues, and that's what we're carrying around. A lot of research is starting to come out in these last 10 years about the effect of our negative thoughts, positive ones too, but our negative thoughts on our physical health,
Mm-hmm.
our negative thoughts on our mental health.
Yeah.
So when we can get to a place where we can come to terms with these old past experiences and let go of the past narratives, we
Mm,
free ourselves up in the present moment,
yeah.
you know? And that person can be whoever they are. Hopefully they're better.
Yeah.
But if they're not, that's not on you, right?
Yeah.
You have to focus on you
Yeah.
and your own healing. You know?
Yeah.
So that's what it's about for me. It's that unraveling, the acceptance of, the understanding of. Once you can do that, you can look back on the past and be like, yeah, that happened. It
Yeah.
informs who I am today, and
Mhm.
I'm moving forward.
Yeah. Wow, thank you for bringing that up. And I wanted to touch here on a second
Mhm.
about forgiveness because this is also something that I teach inside
Mm.
all of my programs. You will learn about the wheel of emotion. It's derived from the feeling wheel that's from Dr. Gloria Wilcox, and the one that I
Mhm.
use very specifically. It has all the feelings. It has the primary, secondary, and tertiary feelings all the way around it. But the core of this wheel is shame on one side, love on the other, as like
Mm.
core feelings divided by forgiveness, as in forgiveness,
Ooh.
absolute core of everything. And, yes, you're going to be on the love
Yep.
side of the wheel that has all those emotions. You're going to be on the shame side of the wheel that has all those emotions as well. But there's always forgiveness in the middle. And this, before I started coaching confidence, was one of the hardest things for me to grasp because I was one of those broads who was like, I'm not forgiving everyone. I'm not like, you have done me wrong and absolutely not. No forgiveness for you. Sorry. And like, I was
Uh-huh.
stuck. I'm a Gemini. I'm an ox. I am absolutely just stubborn and bullhead. And I was like, you did me wrong. Bye. See it kind of thing. Right. And it was also very difficult for me to accept that forgiveness of myself too, thinking about the years that I was,
Yes.
not nice to myself. I was self-harming. I was doing all these things. I was like, that cannot be forgiven. The only way you
Mhm.
forgive, I can't forget, kind of thing. I had all these excuses. But I read an article. I can't remember the doctor that wrote the article, but it was basically describing there's two aspects to forgiveness. The first
Mhm.
aspect of forgiveness is basically someone did something to you that can be forgiven, as in they offer an apology and you in your head go, it wasn't that bad. Maybe it made me sad or angry or hurt. It hurt my feelings or something like that. But someone somehow has a transgression against you, and, with an apology or some kind of acknowledgement that they did something that didn't sit right with you, comes to you, you have a conversation, you go, I forgive you. It's a very easy go.
Mhm.
But there are those things in your life that people have done to you or around you or things that you feel like cannot be forgiven, and this is in
Right.
the way the article was talking about, these traumas or abuses, these harms that have very much impacted you to the point where you can't look back and say, that I learned from lesson learned, I forgive that person, right? It gets very difficult in the
Mhm.
heart to look at that and say it's something that you'll forgive. So the second aspect of
Right.
forgiveness is not to forgive the person that harmed you, but to say, I forgive that this happened to me or that it negatively impacted me in this way, and I'm going to forgive that it happened, to take my power back, to not allow it to
Yep.
hold me where I am, and to continue
Mhm.
moving forward. So it's not saying, it's okay, that's right, I forgive you.
Right.
Instead, it's saying, I forgive the situation and I forgive the impact that it had on me. And I forgive myself for, feeling the way that I feel, as in I can't move forward, or I forgive, it's not the person you're forgiving, but it's saying, I need to have some forgiveness around this situation in order to take my power back and continue moving forward. And I'm not gonna lie, y'all, it took me a long time to grasp this form of forgiveness, because at first I heard it and I was like, bullshit, you ain't getting me that one. You are not getting me with this.
Indeed.
Forget. I was like,
Yep.
no. But I
Yeah,
think that it took a little bit for me to really understand what it meant, to really grasp that it wasn't a forgiveness of the behavior or the action or anything like that, but
that's
that
right.
I needed to let go of it in order to move forward as my vibrant, confidence, Amber Rose self. And I couldn't do that holding on to this. And do not get me wrong, I still struggle with it these days. But I think in the same, in alignment with what we've been talking about throughout this entire episode, is that you don't know how to utilize these tools until you know that they exist. And
That's
so,
right.
yeah, these two paths to forgiveness, this present centered awareness, this past narrative, and learning how it impacts you in the now, which will then impact you in the
Yeah.
future. A lot of this stuff is stuff we don't talk about. It's not the stuff that we talk about
No.
over dinner. It's not the stuff that we talk about with
Nope.
our friends. It's not the stuff that we talk about on a regular basis. And so you may be hearing this for the first time and being like, what is this whole new world? And
Hmm.
sometimes some of these terms and topics come up, and I'm like, I've been in this community for a couple years now, and I'm still learning new things every day, and that's okay. Not all of it is going to be for everyone, but I think the most important part of it is that we continue talking about it, so that when something does land in your ears and you're like, huh, what's that? I could use more of that. I think I need that. Is there something like that? I think this is probably it, that it is there to help you wherever it
Hmm.
is you are in your journey.
Indeed. Well said. Well said.
I wanted to touch real quick as a last little chat here. I know that we were talking about inner mentors before, and how this type of therapy or even reflection work that you do helps with building your inner mentor. So I literally could talk about inner mentors all day long. It's one of my favorite topics. Ever since I learned what an inner mentor was, I'm like, I do my personal yoga studio, we do inner mentor ceremonies every month, so I get to talk to my inner mentor pretty
Oh,
regularly.
beautiful.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. And my inner mentor, she's my homie, and I'm super happy about that. I'm curious. Okay, so I'm gonna stop rambling about inner mentors and turn it over to you. What can you tell me, or share with us your perspective on what an inner mentor is and how it is that you help people, develop their inner mentor,
Mm.
meet their inner mentor?
For me, it starts with uh, helping people to reconnect to their intuitive voice.
Hmm.
It's that voice that we were trained to not listen to,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Since we were kids,
Yeah.
since we were kids, right? And especially women.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're taught to think rather than feel. We're taught to think or use our words rather than sense
Mm-hmm.
something and then act from that felt or sensed space.
Yeah.
What we have learned in reference to like even just the power of manifestation that we're hearing about like all over the place nowadays, it's not about thought. It's
Mm-hmm.
about feeling and sensing. And so oftentimes I will work with people around, they'll say something and I'm like, and they'll let them finish and then I'll ask them, well, where does that come from?
Yeah.
And is that something that you feel in your gut instinct, right? In your intuition? Do you feel it in your heart? Because oftentimes we move from just what we hear outside of ourselves and repeat those thoughts over and over again. And I'm a firm believer thoughts become things,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we need to turn those thoughts inward to see if they resonate with our intuition. with our heart, with our gut instinct. So it starts with intuition. It starts with listening for that inner voice because we all have it. We all have it. We just have been trained to not listen to it.
Mhm.
So oftentimes, the practice of meditation, the practice of stillness, the practice of quiet,
Mhm.
the practice of being in nature allows us to tap into that inner voice, that intuitive voice.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. I remember the first, I think 4 or 5 times I attempted to meet up with my inner mentor, completely escaped me. And I remember feeling a little bit of like shame around that because as a
Mm.
yogi, I was like, I should be able to tap into this voice very easily. And then it was like gone, like not nowhere to be. I'm like, what is going on? And honestly, that the first time that I was actually able to do it was because I hadn't watched any TV for the week. I was like not watching TV and I was off of my phone and off social media. And I
Yes.
remember, I think that I had just gotten back from a trip of some kind, which is why I was so removed from all of my technology. And then I had
Mm-hmm.
ceremony and I sat down to my computer and I remember just being like, oh, I'm on my computer, like to do this ceremony. But like almost immediately dropped in, met my inner mentor, had a conversation. I was like, no wonder everyone thinks this is so awesome. Like I was just like there. But it took me
Yes.
removing my attention span from my Instagram and my Facebook and my Netflix, and like I wasn't constantly consuming this media to tap back into it. And that's one of the things I've really been realizing about all the technology. I love social
Yeah.
media. I absolutely love social media. I love getting on Zoom calls. I love meetings. I love being on my computer. Like I love all the technology. But what I've been realizing is that it really is making me more disconnected, not only from my authentic voice, but it makes it harder for my authentic voice to meet someone else's authentic voice because theirs is getting lost in the muffle too, right? It's getting
Mm-hmm.
lost in the, I don't know about you, but I was promoting something on Instagram for a week and all day long, I can buy myself flowers. And I was like, no, that's like trying to say something else. And I'm like, being very aware of the fact that just even like being on social media more than usual, now I have this loop of a song. I've not even heard the whole freaking song yet. I've only heard the chorus and a little bit. But when you think about it from that perspective, you're like, man, that song's just playing over and over and over. And then you think about how much you're on your social media, how much TikTok are you watching, how much, are you looking for likes on Facebook, how much are you in your Facebook groups, like how much are you doing all this stuff that is now creating this voice inside your head that you can't even hear your own voice anymore. It's a
That's right.
painful to talk about because I'm just like, it like, well, one, it freaks me out like when that starts to happen. I'm like, everything off, like everything off. And you know my morning rituals are really like, I'm not on my phone or my computer. I try to go until 9 o'clock
Yes.
unless I have a meeting super early, but like my phone is not the first thing I do in the morning. In fact, like I turn off my alarm and then I'm like, I don't have to look at you. I'm not looking at you. I don't need to
Nice.
I'm going to be on you all day.
That
I
is
already
the
know
way to
that.
go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, I can't
Yes.
begin to express how not only does it help me reconnect with myself, but like it changes my mood throughout the day. It helps me be more disconnected from my phone because when I start my day and I do a workout, I do my meditation, I do my breath work, I take a shower, I hang out with my cat in the yard, I make my breakfast, and I don't have my phone anywhere near me. It makes me remember, oh yeah, I don't have to be glued to this thing all the time. But
That's right.
start with it, it's like you feel like where's my phone? Where's my phone? All the time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Do you have a,
Absolutely.
do you have a morning ritual?
I do. So I am an early riser just naturally
Yeah.
and sometimes annoyingly because I wake up within the like between 4 and 5 every morning
Yeah.
for like no reason. And so,
Mine's between 5
but
and
I
6. I'm
don't,
always like, why am
there
I?
you go. Why am I
I'm
awake?
awake right now.
Um, but I don't see my first client until 10 a.m. because I want that time for myself,
Yeah.
you know? So I'll get up, I'll have coffee, I'll either meditate and or get on the mat. When the weather is nice, I'll get outside and walk. I do have a treadmill inside. Treadmills are boring, but they get the job done.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I will read or listen to a podcast or listen to an Audible book. Um, Usually, I do have my phone because one of the things I do realize I like doing, sometimes I'll answer because Google created this thing where you can schedule your email responses to go out during
Oh,
business hours.
I like it.
So
I like it.
I will answer emails before business hours and set them to go out during business hours. And then I go and do the rest of my morning so
Yeah.
that when 9 o'clock comes, I don't have to sit down in front of the computer
Yeah.
to do any of that, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah, so it's morning. I'm a person since childhood who doesn't like to rush. I do not
Yeah.
like to be rushed. It was even on one of my report cards, I think in second grade, because they would, send us outside for recess. I was always the last kid out because I didn't like to be rushed. So I let my mornings be leisurely.
uh,
I just love to have leisurely mornings, and it allows me to think. It allows me to connect to the inner voice. That is usually when I get the biggest downloads. It's like,
mhm.
oh, right, I should do that, or thinking about something in a different way.
Yeah.
Love the mornings.
Yeah.
Love them.
Yeah. My downloads usually come in the morning time too.
Yeah.
And bringing it back full circle to what we were talking about at the very beginning of the show, which is that was something that changed for me after 2020. Before 2020, I was
Yeah.
like, go, go, go. I had like 19 projects going at once. Everyone used to be like, when do you sleep? And I was like, I sleep between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. And then I'm back on it. And I had 2 jobs and I was running my business. I'm seeing clients. I was running all these workshops, blah, blah, blah. And then after you know, this is a whole new world for me and I'm still adjusting. And I would say that I'm not adjusting very
Mhm.
well. But like I also too, I crave calm energy. I crave
Yeah.
stillness or chillness. And don't get me wrong, I still like to I do have a lot of energy and I am very vibrant and I like to go out and have fun and listen to music and go dancing. But for the most part, especially when I'm at home, I don't want to
Mhm.
be doing a million things throughout the day. I don't want to be talking to a million people throughout I like loud music. I went to a networking event this morning where we were in this hall and there was like, I don't know,
Mm.
80 of us and just the noise bouncing off the walls. I was like, I'm so overwhelmed and I hate this. And it's something that
Wow.
never would have bothered me before. I was stuck in my house all that for an entire year by
No.
myself. But now I'm just,
Yes.
I don't know what this is. I don't like it. But, I lived 35 years the other way. And now it's just like
Hmm.
3 years in living like this, where I'm like, I'm not adjusting well, but I know that it's like, again, listening to that inner voice, I know that there's something inside of
Yeah.
me that is shifting and changing, and that's okay. But it definitely,
Yes.
like, my old narrative was like, okay, grandma, it's too loud in here for you. Like, I just all of it, like this never would have bothered you, 5 years. This never, like, why are you being so sensitive? And I was like, I'm bullying myself. Why can't it just be okay that it's a little too loud for Amber Rose right now? It's okay.
I
But I could not get out of there fast enough. I got into my car and I was like, the radio came on and I was like, nope, windows down.
Nope. Exactly. But you're listening, right? You're listening to your inner voice, and it's letting you know what is different and what it needs now. You know,
And I,
it's funny. It's
yeah,
funny. That's what we have to do.
Yeah. And I've been loving that my inner critics are also coming in at the same time, because, now this is the opportunity for me to practice what I preach, right? I talk a lot about the inner critics, and I talk a lot about inner mentors. And part of my program is teaching people how to create an inner mediator, which is, you're going to have the critics and you can develop your inner mentor, but sometimes they go like this with each other. They want to fight each other.
Yes.
Your critics want to be,
Yes.
you're being too this, and your mentor is like, well, you're not, this, like these like things, right? So your intermediator gets to come in and say, hey, everybody in their corners, we're going to have respectful talking time with one another. And also, like, both perspectives are validated, but this person at the helm gets to make the decision about what it is, And so,
That's right.
I've been loving the opportunity. I do feel unstable and unshaky at times, because going from being like this chaotic energy, it was like an organized chaos all the time, since even before I finished college, to being like, I just want calm and peace and tranquility, that I'm just like, how do I get that, while also honoring that, like, it's not really a part of who I am, but is it a part of who I want to be, like like balancing ideas and energies are coming from all angles. So I'm currently practicing what I am preaching, and it's going well, but I think the same thing with confidence, the same thing with identity, the same thing with, peace, tranquility, and any type of healing, such as what you do, is that it's always a journey. And the most beneficial thing that we can do is honor where we are in that moment. And instead of labeling it good or bad or positive or negative, we just get to say, this is where I am, and I'm going to acknowledge that this is where I am. And maybe if it's not where I want to be, or not where I feel centered or stable or, calm, that I can make different choices in thoughts or emotions or behaviors to get us closer to where we do tend to, we can feel that equilibrium and alignment.
Indeed.
I've loved having this conversation with you. I knew it was going to be a good one.
Oh, wonderful. I've enjoyed myself as well.
I would love for you. Well, first, I would like to know what it is that you want to be known for.
Oh, as a person that helped to show people the path back to themselves.
Yes.
I think that's it. Because we are all powerful individuals, we are all divinely created, but somewhere along the way we have forgotten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different, what do they call them? Like barricades. I don't like to call them
Yeah.
obstacles, but like, I think the same is true with self-confidence. Self-confidence is a birthright. You were handed your
Yes.
self-confidence papers as you came through the womb, as you came through the tummy. Like, once you arrived,
Yeah.
you had it. And then,
Yep.
slowly but surely you were separated from it. And then it was like all these things got put in the middle of you and that self-confidence. And, part of the work I do is
Yep.
moving those blocks out of the way so that you can reconnect with that. So I love that.
Absolutely.
We need more people like you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And like you as well. This
Where,
is a particularly potent time. And so I think a lot of
man,
people are waking up to the fact that they need those barriers removed.
yeah. And that they need that.
Yeah.
It's so funny, as I kind of feel like people didn't even understand how disconnected they are from themselves, that they
Yeah.
really are so distracted, and I was reading this article about how attention is the new biggest commodity. And it's like,
Yeah, I saw that.
how much time someone can hold your attention is really like the power these days. And I'm like, I want to talk to all these people who can't even hold their own attention for like 5 minutes.
Yes.
I want to talk to you, because that just means that you have everything but you holding your own. I dated a guy for a little while who was just like that. Like he could not sit with himself or quiet in the house, even with me. I was just, he constantly needed my attention. I was like, I'm reading a book. Like you were reading a book like 5 minutes ago. What happened? I'm done.
Like what happened? Yeah.
And I was like, man, you can't hang out with yourself for 5 minutes. Like this is not going to work with us. But it's very interesting because people are very disconnected from themselves, but I don't think they realize how much.
Yes, I would agree.
How is it that you would like people to connect with you? Where can they find you?
Several places. So my website is restoretranquility.com. I am on Instagram, restoretranquility.com, and you can find me on YouTube, restoretranquility.com.
Love it. Okay. Yep. And I'll make sure to put all of those links in the show notes. So those of you who are listening to the show or watching the show, you can check there so you can visit Shervon also. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have really enjoyed this conversation. It's very different from...
It's my pleasure.
Yay. It's very different from some of the other episodes we've had. And I think that it's 100% needed. And so it made me feel really good that we can sit down and chat today.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
Yay. All right. Hey, everybody out there listening and watching, thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode of Women of Color and Confidence. I will be back in 2 weeks with a fresh episode for you. So I will see you then. Bye.